Hello everyone, I'm Chel Campbell. I'm the President of the Australia Alopecia Areata Foundation, and with me today I have
Helena, and I am the Vic Branch Manager.
So we're here today from being both mothers of children with alopecia to open up the discussion. Have any questions that you may have, feel free to drop them into the comments box there, and we'll do our best to answer them openly and honestly, or to the best of our ability in being able to do it. So as a little bit of background, my son Ryan was diagnosed at 20 months with alopecia, and he currently is 23 and he still has alopecia. He has had different versions of it, going from just single patches right through to complete universalis, but most commonly his pattern has been a faces pattern, which basically means he's missing hair from ear to ear and also down the centre of his head.
And Jack was 3.5 when he first had alopecia areata, and it progressed to universalis when he was 6.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Alright, so whilst we wait for some questions to come in, why don't you fire a question at me?
Did you feel that you had to protect Ryan?
Yes, I think naturally every parent sort of goes through the stage that, what is happening here. You think you know the best. You think that everything that you do is that your voice was the right voice, and that you had to explain everything to everybody along the way. And it was, I just felt that he wasn't capable of telling people the right story. What I learned along the journey was that it was his story, and although how I wanted to explain it and what I wanted him to say, he actually had a better relationship with his friends, a better relationship with his peers, and he was at the same age as his peers, so he could relate and talk to them accordingly. Through the journey, you learn, to sort of step back. You learn at what times you do need to sort of intervene, but you need to, take it with everything else and work on that as part of the journey going through.
Yeah.
So, what about yourself? Do you feel that you need to protect Jack?
Yes, similar. I think that at the start you very much want to protect them all the time, and make sure you can do everything that you can just to make sure that they're okay, and that, like you said, they're telling the right story and that everybody understands. But with time, I think you need to let them be able to tell their own story and understand it for themselves. You get better with it. You get better.
Yeah, because you're not there 24/7.
Exactly.
So when you're not there, they actually have to have their own way to be able to explain it and work through it. And I suppose that's absolutely the thing that I learned along the journey, is that he was quite capable of actually telling, and quite capable from a very young age of being able to explain things in his own way. And so I think that's sort of my one.
When Ryan was diagnosed, how did the family react?
Yeah, so because he was, diagnosed at least 20 years ago, there really wasn't a lot of information publicly out there. Definitely wasn't on the internet, and that we didn't have those resources that we had today. So one, we didn't know a lot about it, and two, it was at an early age, and we were told that it's very likely that this would be a long-term condition for him. So for me it was really, he's going to look different. We really didn't know how different he was going to look, but we understood that he was going to look different. So the treatments that we would put forward at that stage, I wasn't going to do on a 20-month-old baby. So we opted that we wouldn't do any treatments whatsoever, and that it really was me working out how I was going to tell everybody in regards to it. So I went and saw a psychologist and worked through with them on what we commonly know now as self-esteem, self-appearance, self-image. Back then those terms weren't sort of thrown around like they are today. But in doing so, I learnt from that people are going to ask questions because they're curious, and lots of it will just be through good nature in people asking those. Other times it will be, sometimes they'll be nasty in regards to it, but the more information we could share with them, it was going to be better. But also for me, the one thing I took away from that was that it's very hard to be negative with somebody, to bully somebody if you have empathy. Mm-hmm. And so we did some trial sort of examples within the family unit in regards to what does empathy actually mean, and trying to trial empathy. And so we taught Ryan at a very early age how to act differently between the genders, because if you actually say to a girl you're sick and you're young, girls are very nurturing and protective and really want to just cuddle you and be that way. And so he got away with a lot of stuff at that age. And with the boys he was a bit more rugged, and that was the one thing that we actually did was work on sort of teaching in regards to the empathy side of things, and doing that and really building up Ryan's toolkit. I talk about a toolkit, like some people might wear wigs, some people might wear scarves. For Ryan, it wasn't matter. He wore hats, he wore beanies, he wore the jackets with the hoodies and that on it. But he also went as Ryan. He had clippers, and he was in charge of his hair. So it was his choice whether or not he wanted to wear the sprigs of hair he had, whether he shaved. And his little stories, his little jokes, and those components actually went in as what I class as part of his toolkit and such. So what did you do to help Jack understand the changes that he was going to go through?
From the beginning, I think I've always thought it was really important to be very open and talk about the alopecia, and we spoke a lot about how people are different and all the things that make us special and unique. And like you said, children are often, or people in general, are very curious, but children in particular can be very direct with their questions. And in the beginning, he would get upset when people would say, "Why don't you have any hair?" But I had to teach him the difference between people asking because they were curious and they didn't know what alopecia was, and people being mean about it and calling names and saying mean comments. But he got much better with understanding that you can just say, "I have alopecia and my hair doesn't grow." Yeah. And majority of kids are fine with that. They'll just continue playing and it will be no issue. They just don't understand what it is. So I think once you give that explanation, it's like, okay, and off they go.
And I think that's a very important point too, because we often get into the foundation, "Oh, my child's being bullied," and I'll say, "Well, what did they say?" And they'll say, "Oh, they called my son bald," and I said, "Well, your son is bald." And I'll say, "What does your son say to that person? Do they wear pigtails, or do they have blue eyes, or they're wearing a green dress?" And they'll go, "Yes." And I go, because children actually will say it as they see it. It's not that they haven't learnt at that early age some of those filters that we might have to sort of move through. So I think that's a great point.
And if I think it's really important to work on self-esteem, as you've said, and I think it's a good thing for everybody, not just children who have alopecia, but for everybody to have a really good positive health self-esteem. And I think we introduced affirmations before bedtime, and we would do those, and then we would talk about the best part of our day. And I think that was a really good opportunity for us to ever talk about, because after school you always say, "How was your day and what happened and what did you do?" And they're so tired and it's so hard to get information out of them. But by bedtime he was relaxed, and I would often say, "How was your day?" And it would come out if somebody had upset him or something had happened and somebody had called him names, and it was a good opportunity for us to really talk about it and work through those issues. So I think that's a good way to because I think especially with this condition, you always want to know if somebody calling you names or are you having any troubles. So if there's a way to kind of talk about it and keep the conversation going and check that they're okay, and that was a good way to introduce that.
And just feeding off that, one of the things I learnt through the journey with Ryan was every year, as he got older, actually asking him, how do you want to, talk to your friends about this? What message is it that you want to say? Do you want mum to go into battle for you? Do you want me to be answering on your behalf? Things like that, because I found as he progressed through school and as he got older and as he changed between single gender peer groups to multi, the importance of mum's questioning changed, and he was very interested in understanding, definitely when he went into the multi peer groups, how females would react to certain questions that were answered and things like that as well. So one of the things that if anyone comes into the foundation and they ask me for my advice, and I think I've got it as one of these questions, is that no matter what age they are, always ask them how they want you to be telling people, and do it every single year in regards to it. And because as they change, how they react to alopecia changes, how they live with alopecia changes, how they accept alopecia, all of it changes. And although on the surface I might have looked at Ryan and said, oh, he's coping great, he has no worries whatsoever, he plays football and he plays soccer and he swims and he's into everything, he's got huge peer group, that might be the persona on the outside. And on the inside, you've really got to just keep on asking those questions so that you understand where they're at.
Jack is 8 at the moment, so I know the issues I face are different to the issues that you face. And I know with time, obviously, once he goes through puberty and he's a teenager, there'll be a lot more. But I agree, it's so important to always check in with them and just see, how they're going and how they want to tell their story.
Yeah, exactly.
And I find though most people are fine with it, and you don't really get all that many questions. And if you do, a lot of people say, I've heard of that, I know somebody who has that, and it's more of an empathy. It's not,
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
So just checking in, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to, put them through. We've got a black screen, so I can't see anything. So we'll just get them passed over to us so that we can, filter some of them and ask some of them. So, all right, so down to the big ones. How did you cope as a mum?
As a parent, we always want our children to be happy and healthy no matter what. We just want them to have a great life and do what we can to help them along the way. So even though Jack was a happy and healthy kid and he was facing this, as it was progressing to universalis, I did start to find it difficult because I didn't know how he would handle it, how people would treat him and how it would affect his life. I am obviously very familiar with alopecia. I have had it myself, areata, throughout my life. My sister has it, we've had relatives who've had stages of it, so I knew what it was. As soon as he had it, I knew what it was. And I guess it's this thing of, what if it does continue to universalis? But, on the outside for him I was really strong, but on the inside I felt guilty, I felt frustrated and I felt sad. So when we first shaved his hair, I sent a photo of him to our family and our friends. And it was such a beautiful photo too, but he was so proud. And I asked if they could share it with their children and just explain that he had alopecia, that we'd shaved his head and just what it was. And it made it so much easier when we went to see people in person, because it was already out in the open. And I'm very much about, it's not a secret, we don't need to tiptoe around it, this is how it is. And everybody was great, and they would say, Jack, I love your new haircut, and he loved it. So it was a much easier way than having to see everybody and then talk about it while we were there, because at the beginning I couldn't even really talk about it. I was emotional, I would cry, so it was easier for it just to be, out in the open. And after a few months of him having universalis, I realised that as strong as I was for him, I probably wasn't dealing too well for myself. So I saw a psychologist for a few sessions, which was really good just to talk about it, because I think with family and friends, they often comment and will say things because they feel they have to, and they always mean well, but I often get lucky he's a boy, lucky it's not cancer, which yes, but it's still hard.
Yes.
And it's still challenging, and it's still, you don't want that for your child to go through anything.
No.
I never let my feelings of anxiousness or worry ever show on him, because I thought if I showed him that I was strong, he would be strong too.
Yeah.
And he would think that there's nothing to worry about. But as I said, he's still very little.
Yeah.
And, you know, each stage will come with different challenges, I guess.
Yeah. Yep,
So,
it does.
Yeah, and he knows that when he's outside, he has to wear a hat just to protect his scalp, obviously, but it's his choice if he wants to wear a hat indoors. And at the beginning, I was always hoping he would, because I didn't want anybody to stare at him, and I hated when people stared at him, because I guess you have that protective mother instinct of, you know, don't stare at my child. But now I never forced him to wear a hat. So it's very much his choice, and I'm almost, no, not almost, I am proud of him when he does it in such a public place, because I know that he's confident in who he is and he's proud of himself. So yeah, I'm really proud of him, and I think that he's come such a long way too. So yeah, and I think also we had a conversation talking about the 3 stages of alopecia, and what were they again?
So the first one is actually investigating. So you're trying to discover everything you possibly can about alopecia, and most people can't believe that there's, you know, this time and day that there's no cure, there's no successful treatment, and so they'll go down a path of, you know, discovery, and then they start to understand that, well, they need to live with alopecia. And so they start working more on the techniques that are out there to, you know, live with it. And then they are living with it, and so then you move into that other one where you've gone into acceptance that, you know, you're not discovering everything, you've got the tools in your kit bag, and out you go, and, you know, go that way. So they're the sort of the 3 stages that people go through, and
embracing.
And embracing, that last one is the embracing.
I definitely am at embracing now, and I didn't think that I would ever feel comfortable enough to get there, but I think it's been quite a quick transition to get there. But, you know, we definitely do everything we can to embrace life with alopecia and just accept it and take it as it comes.
Yeah. And I think certainly, you know, through the journey that I sort of had with, you know, Ryan, and understanding his acceptance of it as he went through. I mean, obviously from a very early age he was always bald. So he was just always bald. So that was just his look, and that's where he was. But he chose whether or not he wanted to wear the hair that he had or he didn't. And he has continued that the whole way through. And, you know, I've had comments from principals that, you know, Ryan would be accepted more if he actually shaved off his head. And I said, oh, so you actually believe that a 12-year-old completely bald is more accepted than someone who's got some hair? And, you know, to me that was just an appalling statement made by the principal, and showed lack of compassion and understanding and acceptance of a child regardless of how they looked. You know, and
do you think now, with how far we've come in embracing diversity and I guess accepting differences, do you think that there's so much more of a difference with that? Because I don't,
Look, I'd love to actually say yes to that, but that comment that was made to me was only made under 5 years ago, and it was actually when Ryan was exiting the school, when we had an exit interview with the principal there. So, you know, maybe now, 5 years down the track, it might be a little bit different, but, you know, look, that was one of the situations where I sort of turned back and went, yeah, I've dropped the ball a little bit here, because if this is what he's copping every day from, you know, the school, the teachers, yeah, maybe I've dropped the ball a little bit in keeping, you know, right on top of it. And I thought that I was right on top of it. So when I heard a comment from that, I just thought, oh, you know, definitely in his teenager years, you know, even though he wanted to be in control and all the rest of it, there was still probably a place for me in the background to be ensuring at the, I suppose if you want to call it the political, the organisational level, I still probably needed to be involved and educating, you know, that group of people, and definitely not educating his friends and his peers and so forth, but ensuring, you know, comments like that were dismissed.
Yeah. Jack's principal is great. I adore her. I think she's such a wonderful principal. But she always made him feel very comfortable in that if he wanted to wear his hat inside, he could. His beanie inside, he could. And so he was in prep when we first shaved his head. So it was about August. And then he never chose to wear a hat. He was very happy to not have one indoors. But once he actually started grade 2 this year, he wanted to keep his hat on.
Yep.
And it took him about a week and a half. And I thought, it's unusual behaviour from him, but I was happy to do it because if that's what made him happy. But he said he didn't know everybody in his classroom. Mm-hmm. So once he got comfortable with all the people, then one day he just took it off.
Yep.
But the principal had actually come around and said to him that it was okay and not to worry.
Yep.
So I guess it's just...
And it is the comfort level, and it's actually, and as parents we sort of read into it, like we read into it that it's because he's got alopecia that, you know, he's uncomfortable in that environment or whatever. And look, part of it could be, we'll never know, but also part of it could be them just all being new kids and trying to understand, is that one going to be my friend or not going to be my friend? And so it's one of those things that you just got to always juggle, isn't it? Yeah. So, all right. So what advice do you have?
I'll ask you a question.
Oh, you'll
now.
ask me. Okay.
As Ryan has had alopecia areata for over 20 years, what age group do you think was the most challenging for him and for you?
Oh, absolutely, the teenage years. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Now, is that because teenagers are just really difficult for everybody? I mean, look, the challenges I had with him were very different than the challenges I had with my other child. But both of those children have got completely different personalities, different sports, different everything. Right? So, but yeah, I mean, I thought he was very comfortable in his peer group. I thought he was very comfortable with his alopecia. I thought he was confident and easygoing. Ryan played really elite sport, and he represented Australia in different sorts of sports, and so he was always on show in regards to his condition. And he never seemed to be fazed about that whatsoever. But then one day he just said, "I'm not playing footy anymore." And I was sort of like, okay, where's that come from? And he just said, "I'm absolutely sick to death of running out on that field and being scragged about my appearance." Mm-hmm. He said, "I've just had enough." And so he stopped playing footy. And there's not much.
How old was he?
He was 17. Yeah. And there's not much you can do about that. But he had been called names every day, every single day. Mm. And I know we sort of term it now as bullying and that, but he would give as good as he got. So who started it, who finished it, don't really know. But during the early stages, that didn't seem to be an issue with him, didn't seem to bother him. But, something sort of triggered when he was a bit older, and he just went, no, not interested in dealing with that crap every day.
Did he ever go back to playing footy, or did he miss it?
No, he didn't. He started doing racing motorbikes, and doing that sort of sport. But no, he just dropped out of football altogether, and which was sad because he was an excellent player and so forth. But
at least he picked up another activity that he enjoys. I think activities are really important for I think for all children, but more so for alopecia. Jack's started karate this year, which I think is another good thing for his self-esteem. But he's really enjoying it. Yeah,
because you do need that peer group. You need to be engaged with them and that type of stuff. And Ryan also used the excuse that he didn't want to get hurt because he'd started his apprenticeship as being a plumber and that type of stuff. But we did actually talk through, what was the weight? Was it, getting hurt with work or being, chastised because of his appearance, and the chastising of the appearance was high on the list rather than the, you know, getting hurt from work. That was just sort of a, I'll slip that in because, you know, Mum wants to hear that, you know, because I want to be a good apprentice and, you know, working and that sort of stuff, So it was that. So,
and do you think this was because he was a teenager and the challenge that come with that age group, or more for his alopecia kind of?
Yeah, no, look, I'll never know. Like, I'll absolutely never know. Look, with a lot of things that sort of happened with Ryan, and Ryan's extremely social, and he's continued to be extremely social, so it didn't change him in that area. But if there's anyone out there, if you go to our website, Ryan put his story up there, and it starts with, you never want to be known as the bald kid, you know. So, and I think that says everything, because the school that he was at, he was known as the bald kid. He wasn't known as Ryan or whatever, he was known as the bald kid. And I think after a period of time, it, you know, probably wears you down. And I think that's sort of where he got to, you know, with that little bit there. Yeah. So, right, what advice would you give other parents?
I would suggest looking at the website, as there's lots of info on there. There's some grief information, school pack information. There's a great infographic that Georgia has made.
Okay.
We might just pop it in the comments as well, because I think it relates to a lot of people. Just comments that you hear along the way, and just things that relate to alopecia. It's a great infographic. I think that also, if you are struggling as a parent, that it's really important to seek some professional support.
Yep.
And I think obviously there's nothing wrong with that at all. And it did help me. I only had a handful of sessions, but it was enough just to get off my chest what I needed to
get off.
Yeah.
And without it being within the family unit, so you can talk openly and honestly without taking on other people's burdens.
Yeah, and people telling you what you want to hear, and telling you that it's going to be okay, because you know it is going to be okay, but at that time, and it's relative to everybody and their circumstances, but it was good seeing somebody. And I just think overall it's just really important to keep the discussion going, keep it an open thing, let your child lead the way in how they want to, I guess, deal with it. And for Jack, I asked him, I was going to see the dermatologist, and I asked him if he wanted to come along, and he said that he does, but he doesn't want to have any medicine because he likes the way that he is, which was very sweet. But yeah, I think open communication helps them to feel confident and understand that it's okay to be different and learn to embrace life with alopecia.
All right, so we've got a question here, is wondering at what age did you allow your child to help make decisions regarding treatment?
Jack hasn't received any treatment. He is still 8, but if he decides that he would like to, then it's something we will explore, but it's not something we have done yet. But he's not interested at the moment.
Okay. So with Ryan, Ryan has just started to take treatment, and he started taking treatment when he was 21. So he was given opportunities throughout his whole journey as to whether or not he did or he didn't want to take any treatment. He opted that he wasn't interested in them, and especially in the earlier ages, I think it was more because well, the treatments just weren't as good as what some of the treatments are that are coming out now. You know, personally for me, I think it's very important to understand the side effects of that on young children, you know, growing. And I recall one of the very early sessions, and yes, he was only 20 months old, but one of the treatments that they offered at that stage was the ultraviolet light treatment. And the doctor said to me, so we can do the ultralight treatment, but do you want to have grandkids? Because it'll probably make him sterile.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, he's 20 months old. Hadn't actually thought whether or not I wanted to be a grandparent at this stage. So, you know, that was one of the things that sort of, you know, popped up. So, all right, next one is advice for teenage boys who are looking for a girlfriend. What do you say, apart from you hope they find a girl who doesn't care about the looks and what they do? Okay, well, look, I'd like to actually say that, you know, Ryan has struggled in this area, but it's not something I can say Ryan, just through his social network with friends, has been within a peer group for since he was probably around about the 13, 14 age group. I don't know whether or not it's because Ryan is very friendly and caring and honest in regards to it, but all of the girls that he's had within his life really haven't cared about his looks. It's been more about Ryan himself and Ryan's personality. So look, he definitely hasn't struggled in being able to obtain female company. Mm-hmm. He's in for him at 22, a long-term relationship. He's been in that for a couple of years, but he circulates and has a lot of female people within his age group. So all right, what else have we got? Is it common for alopecia to be related to eating disorders? Okay, so, all right, it's not common for alopecia to be related to anything, is the short answer in regards to that. Until there is actually a cure for it, then, if anything that is out there can be there. Alopecia areata is an autoimmune disease, and therefore that does drive on the white blood cells. So if you're not getting enough nutrients in your body, if you've got other ailments within your body where the white blood cells need to work in those other ailments, it will distract those white blood cells from doing the job that they need to do, and that is cleansing the hair root. So a lot of the times, if you're malnourished, you will lose hair, but that doesn't mean it's alopecia areata. So conditions like ringworm, lupus, iron deficiencies all show with diffuse hair loss or even patches going, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a diagnosis of alopecia areata. It's a little bit different. My son was last year. I don't know if they're actual questions or. Okay. Advice for a dad whose teenage daughter is experiencing alopecia, right? And anorexia. All right. So I think the first thing here, in regards to, I think both of them are very different types of issues in regards to it. So the anorexia is more on a psychological component of it, where alopecia is on a health side of it. So you are dealing with both components in that regard. Personally, I'd be addressing the anorexia side of it, far more, because I think that's going to have a greater impact on her life, going forward. For us with alopecia, and you've got a teenage girl, we do have a teenage support group. We also have support ambassadors that can engage and talk with teenagers outside of it being an adult area. She's more than welcome to actually connect in at any stage. We also do run a kids camp at the end of the year, and we have had great success in engaging those teenagers together, making friendships, engaging and just seeing other people as they go along. So that's probably about the best that I can help in regards to that. Okay, all right, well, if that's it, thank you everybody for joining us and listening to two mothers rant on about their experiences with children. And we're always here, so if you've got any other questions that you'd like to ask afterwards, we'll keep on checking the feed in regards to that. And we wish you all the best. All right, thank you.